And we're live. So, hello, She's the First campus audience in our STF GAP program. My name is Katie. I'm the campus program coordinator here at She's the First, and I'm really excited to have you all here for our first hashtag STF GAP live chat, co-hosted this month by Dermalogica and the FITE Foundation. And we're talking about economic empowerment, which is such a cool topic and perfectly aligned with what FITE is doing. So, without any further ado, I'm going to stop talking, hand it over to Natalie, who's our moderator this evening. She also happens to be the Director of Global Impact at Dermalogica, and she will be telling you a little more about the FITE Foundation and what they're doing and how they're supporting this GAP program, and then also introducing all of our lovely speakers. So just a quick reminder, there is a Q&A tool on this call where you can submit your questions throughout the Hangout discussion, and we'll be answering them as we go or taking them at the end if that's appropriate. You can also tweet in your questions to She's the First with the hashtag STFGAP. So excited to have you, and I will hand it over to Natalie.
Hi guys, thanks Katie. So as she said, I'm Natalie Byrne. I am the Director of Global Impact at Dermalogica. We are the #1 professional skincare company in the world, and we work all over the world with skin therapists and salon owners. So we're both working on the product side as well as the education side, and I run our FITE initiative, which stands for Financial Independence Through Entrepreneurship, joinfight.org, and that's our social impact piece. So through FITE, we work on investing in women's potential and economic empowerment. And we're doing this in a couple different ways, helping girls have access to education. And in our partnership with She's the First, I think a lot of you guys have gotten to know FITE over the years. So we're really excited to be communicating with you directly today. And we work on access to capital, and we have microfinance partnerships with Kiva, as well as business network and leadership programs, vocational training programs. We work with different nonprofits in different areas, and our newest program, Fight Future Entrepreneurs, is focused on the salon industry. So we're really looking at how we can make the biggest impact both as a company and through our nonprofits. And I'll speak to a little bit more of those specifics as we dive in, but we have some incredible different panelists here representing different sectors and different ways of attacking the issues and lifting up women. So with that, I would like to go out to Aissa. Are you on the line?
Aissa, you said?
Yeah. Hi, Aissa.
Yes. Hi. How are you doing?
So where are you today? Where are you sitting on this Google Hangout?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I am sitting here in New York.
Cool.
I'm not always in New York because I work for BRAC, and BRAC is an organization started out of Bangladesh, and in 1971, I believe, after the independence war there, but in 2001, BRAC started going international, and we are now, and it operates at scale, so we now touch the lives of, between 1971 and 2005, in 2015, I'm taking us back, we've been able to touch the lives of 135 million people in 12 countries with a staff of 120,000 people. So at any point in time, I can be anywhere in the world. I can be in Bangladesh, I can be in any of our Africa countries, and we have 5 African countries, South Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. My specialty is in West Africa, so I work a lot with our programs in Liberia and Sierra Leone.
And will you give us a little bit of some examples of kind of the work that BRAC does?
So I'll start with what I do that I'm really, really excited about. Well, no, let me give you a general overview. So BRAC, we like to say that program-wise, we do whatever it takes to empower the poor around the world. So at any point in time, you'd see BRAC working in the areas of microfinance, healthcare, education, agriculture, as well as within girls' empowerment. And specifically, in West Africa, I work on 2 portfolios, our microfinance portfolio, so ensuring that women and young women, and as well as older women entrepreneurs, are able to access the funding that they need to carry out their businesses, so they're not locked out of the economy. And then working as well with young women who are developing the future of the country, basically. And we work with young women who are in school and out of school in our youth programs.
And and even we do a lot of work on that too, like how we're making sure that the pipeline from being a girl to being a woman entrepreneur, that we're not losing anyone, and it's strong. And you mentioned a lot of things in there that are important, as in education, access to healthcare, how we're looking at these girls having voices in their own communities. Would you speak a little bit about those different like places that girls can fall out along the way, and the programs that you guys have to keep them there?
So we start working with girls. First of all, the majority of our programs, we work mainly with women. We try to work with girls. That's our thing. In my office, we practice positive discrimination. I think we have like 13 women on staff, and I think this is a thing that a lot of NGOs actually do. You just find a lot of women working in that field. To start with, officially, we've been working on the individual level with girls as young as 10 in our programs. But of course, if you count our education programs, the interventions that happen at the early childhood level with mothers, we work with young girls as young as, babies, 3-year-olds. But officially, we start working with young girls to make sure they don't drop out of school. In our girls empowerment programs, we start working with them when they're 10. But the philosophical shift that's happening now in the program, as a learning organization, as you implement your programs, you really have to think about, what am I doing right? What can I be doing better? So that's the curve that BRAC is always on, and we are finding that you can get to girls when they're 10, but in order to eliminate some of these problems that we're seeing at 10, you have to really start working with girls earlier than that. You have to start working with their families. You have to start working. It's not just about the girl. It's about the household that they live in. It's about the opportunities that the household can provide for them. So then you're talking about mothers. You're talking about fathers. You're talking about empowerment at the household level. You're talking about providing access to good health care. You're talking about providing access to early childhood education. So when you get the girls, up to 10, when they start hitting puberty, some of the issues that we deal with are, child marriage. Some of the issues we deal with are early pregnancies. Some of the issues that we deal with are dropouts. Girls are dropouts because they have to stay at home. They have to help their families. They're basically part of the economy in their home. They have to work, right? People depend on girls. Families depend on girls more than they do boys to bring in income at a quite an early age, and it really affects the long-term outcomes for these girls.
Yeah. Well, and the tie between, the value of a girl, what it sounds like you're talking about, and making sure that we're giving them the tools to reach their full potential. And when you're talking about a lot of those child labor situations, they're not being paid as a entrepreneur. It's pretty much slavery. So I completely hear you on the importance of making sure that we have these safe systems for them, and you guys are doing an excellent job. I think I was reading something you said about looking at a disaster relief, and when you're looking at emergency responding and making sure that you start to invest in women. I think you were speaking specifically around microfinance, which is something that we do with Kiva, and in our program, it's something that it's really exciting because we work across the company to generate awareness for FITE and the issues that we believe in women's economic empowerment. And through that partnership, we give $25 loans out to our consumers and our employees and people that we meet, and just a way to, when you buy a product, you can get involved in our FITE programs. And actually through that, we've reached over 70,000 women, which is so incredible just by relending. So I was wondering if you could explain a little bit of that process, why women are so successful to invest in, and what your experience has been with microfinance.
Well, we found that at the household level, women are they're the investee if you want to move indicators in any country you go to, because of the simple fact that any dollar invested in a woman goes back directly into the home versus when you invest a dollar in men, unfortunately. This has been the case for ages. We're just recognizing this in very tangible ways. And women are good, they're savvy business women, they're savvy business people. So it's not just when we're talking about microfinance and entrepreneurship, it's not just about the soft stuff. Oh, they're women, so therefore they need help. No, these are legitimate business women who need help, like other business people, to get their businesses from point A to point B. And you're able to, people apply and they go through a screening process. We take a look at their businesses. There's a due diligence that takes place there. So then when you're sure that when you put a dollar into the hands of a woman, she can come back with you. She can come back to you, having built up her business. She can pay her loans, and she can take out other loans to further build up, to scale up her business.
It's incredible to watch, and I'm sure you've seen it firsthand. Is there anyone in particular that comes to mind that's been a really incredible success story to watch?
There's this woman that I met in Liberia. I was in Liberia in December of last year at the height of the Ebola crisis, and I met this woman in Kakata, that's a city in Liberia, and she had lost 7 members of her family to Ebola. She herself was an Ebola survivor, and she was one of our microfinance borrowers. And she had lost her business because she was a cook, and of course nobody will buy from a cook. There's a lot of came with being an Ebola survivor. People didn't want to come near you, so definitely people didn't want to buy your food. But she came out, and she's an active member of the Survivors Association in Liberia. She travels all the time for these meetings, going into communities to educate people about the virus, as well as about why they don't have to stigmatize against survivors. And she's been able to, little by little, she was able to reestablish her businesses. Our microfinance companies, during the Ebola crisis, we paused operations. But what we also did that was beneficial to our clients was we suspended payments. And for people like this woman who was sick and lost her business, we wrote off loans. So we're able because of good business practices, we had enough on our balance sheet that we're able to absorb some of those losses, and so that people could come back. And people really, when we reopened, people were excited. People wanted to be able to act, so they could rebuild their lives because they lost practically everything.
We all lived through that. We were watching it on television. It was something that I'm sure all of the students tuning in today, you're in those moments thinking, what can we do to help? And it's incredible to think that focusing on women on the ground and helping them rebuild their businesses and their communities is the way that, in the long run will be able to combat disasters such as that. So I think this is a perfect time to switch to Megan for a minute. Megan and I have crossed paths on girls' education. We both have partnered with Girl Rising, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about what she does, because it's incredible to hear the journey of, as a company like Dermalogica in the beauty industry, when you're making your profit from women purchasing power, I think that's something that we can all think about in our lives is how as consumers every day we're contributing to making the world better. And so I'm excited for Megan to jump in and tell us a little bit about her.
Sure. Well, I'll talk about Katrinka. First of all, nice to meet you all. I'm a huge fan of She's the First, so it's really exciting to meet even more students. I get to meet the folks who come to New York sometimes, but great to be a part of this hangout. My company is Katrinka. It's an ethical fashion accessories label dedicated to creating choices for women and girls. I started it because I wanted to create opportunities for women to work. Women are hustlers. As Issa said, women work. We get stuff done, and we create value for the next generation. As she said, the statistics are that women reinvest twice as much of their income in their families and communities as men do. Sometimes I find that statistic a little bit sad because I think it's indicative of the fact that women's businesses are usually the ones that are rated in time of need, so they don't get to reinvest as much in their businesses because they need to invest in their families. But it's also, of course, broadly indicative of women's values and where we put our money to work. Women reinvest in the next generation, and so Katrinka as a business does too. I call it paying forward. And so we invest a share of the profits from every product sold in education and life skills mentoring for adolescent girls in the places where we work. We're very focused on financial literacy for girls. I don't know if anybody's heard Helen Mirren say that the most important thing we need to teach our girls is to be financially independent. I was raised that way. My parents, it was very important to them that I never have to depend on a man. And I think, obviously, I've had enormous gifts and opportunities that most others have not. But I think it's incredibly important for girls to understand how money works and how to take control of their own future. And so that's a huge focus of the work that we do through a nonprofit partner in the field.
That's incredible. And tell us a little bit about kind of the model. If I wanted to be a bigger part of Katrinka, and I'm just a young woman that is thinking about what's going on in the world, but want to work with brands that are also doing that. Tell me a little bit about what you guys do specifically.
About how the business works and how the brand works.
Yeah.
So I design products and I sell them on the internet. There's a team, but it's a lot of me. I'm a social entrepreneur. But the core, I would say there's a number of core pieces in this. One of them is the supply chain. So I come from an infrastructure background, building power plants and waste treatment facilities and lots of sexy things like that on a number of different continents. I love textiles. My grandmother was a weaver, and so in all of my travels, I've collected textiles. In general, there are exceptions, but textiles are usually women's work, and I really wanted to celebrate women's work with this company. So I find organizations I can work with that are ethical, and I have my own standards for that, as well as referring to other external standards that treat people fairly. And that also are focused on women, so predominantly employing women and ideally woman-owned and woman-run too. I like to invest through the food chain to produce beautiful things that I can sell that will appeal to a modern urban consumer and really try to incorporate traditions local to where places are. That's a core element of our sustainability. We source everything in country, and we work with local design inspirations to really try to bring that product to life, obviously with some modifications for, zippered pockets and leather handles and all the things that people care about. We predominantly create bags, which is kind of nice because there's a power of the purse kind of message in there. I remember learning from somebody in the field like Isa about a financial, a training program for women who were taught in a rural community to appreciate the value the economic value they created. They just thought that, they did housework. But, these people would come, their part of the training program was to recognize, well, you look after the sheep, and then you sell the sheep at market, and you do all of these different things. There's value in there. How much money did you earn from doing this? And as part of this, they were really trying to bring women into the formal economy and increase their status within the household. And what this woman told me, which I thought was so lovely, was that the sign of real progress was when they got a bag. It was a purse. They literally had a purse to hold their own money in. And it was incredibly empowering, and it really changed the dynamic in the household. And that's a huge part of what we see that we're doing, is just creating the choices for women to hustle and blow the door down and do what we all know they can do that often they aren't given the opportunity to do.
Well, I love that you across from both ground you're working with and here in the U.S. for someone who might be purchasing your bags. It's a beautiful symbol. And the textile behind you is so cool.
Yeah, this is actually in Rajasthan, in Jaisalmer, Rajasthan.
Oh, it's awesome. I think, is there anything you could speak to about how sometimes it's difficult to find women entrepreneurial owned and operated businesses on the ground, and how, if you've had to face any of those challenges?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's I'm very, very dedicated to providing a lot of transparency to every customer. So if you buy something from us, there's a hang tag on it, and it says you provided how many days of work and how many days of education for girls. We roll it up. I think I'm at 4,200 days of work for women on 16 continents and over 55,000 days of education for girls. I'm a huge fan of BRAC's work. We haven't worked with them yet, but I would love to.
Wow.
So that part of it's really important to me, and I expect the same from my suppliers. And so I have a network. I haven't been in the fashion business for a long time. I am good at building infrastructure. So I've worked to build the supply chain is really what I'm proudest of, as well as the impact. And so I will reach out to any organization anywhere, and I ask a lot of questions. And you usually find you don't want to give away the whole story up front, because then people sometimes tell you what you want to hear. But you find pretty quickly that when people go radio silent, it's because they don't have a story they want to tell you. I also use people in country to vet and audit, and I have traveled as well. But I find in terms of finding the resources, one particular challenge I have is I make handbags, and a great place to make textile handbags is India. And the Indian fashion market, production market, is entirely gender segregated for sexual harassment reasons. So typically, first of all, there are gender issues anyway, but separately you find that just it's more convenient to keep the women working in one area and the men working in another, because then you don't have problems. And the men tend to get the high-value jobs. So one area that I found really challenging, I can find a lot of places that will employ women, sometimes not so ethically. I can find, co-ops that are very difficult to scale and very difficult to, it's often very hard to deliver on deadline and to really scale up, which is an important part of my sort of metrics for success, is how we're able to scale up our impact, which means we need to be able to make more things. And then in India, I'll just share one story of something that was so frustrating to me. I had a contact with someone who had been in the fashion industry for a long time and went to business school in New York, and we had a whole long conversation about his factory and how we could potentially work together and everything. And I'm pretty clear about what it is I'm trying to do, and I'm celebrating women's work. It's amazing, and this is what I want to bring to the table. And so I ask, do men make this? Who makes this? How does it work? Whatever. How do people get paid? We go through the whole conversation. At the end of it, and he lets me know that he's going to look out for some charity that might have some women who might make something. And I just was thinking that was just so not the point. Like, you're seriously telling me that in the entire country of India there's not women who make things? We all know that's not true. So I find that piece of it, that's the most sort of in my face. I mean, I actually think he was trying to be nice, but that's sort of the most in my face rejection I've had. Most people kind of get it. They maybe think it's a little soft or silly or nice, but at least it's objective. And the fact that he was really writing women off entirely was really a disappointment.
Yeah, well, and it's so interesting because it's the same conversations we have here in the U.S. on, where are the women? Why aren't there women on boards? Well, because we can't find any women to be on boards. Well, that's ridiculous. Or as your experience in the supply chain, it's so fascinating. Even I spend a lot of time talking with other people, musicians like mine, at companies where what's our vendor list look like? If you're throwing events, how many catering companies are owned by women, right? And just these small decisions we make every day, even if this is the values of the company, philanthropically, they should be the business strategy values as well. So I'm so happy you brought up that point. And for all of those young students out there, I just have to really commend her, because she's a woman entrepreneur that's taking this so seriously, and it's not easy. So you're doing the hard work, and it's really cool to hear.
Thanks.
Yeah. I wanted to now give you a chance to meet our third and amazing panelist. She has had quite an interesting background. I'll let her kind of give you an overview, and has herself been working on the ground with women entrepreneurs who were jewelry makers, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah. So I'd love to hear sort of your different experiences helping build women entrepreneurs. So I'd love to welcome Marisa to the conversation.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you guys having me and including me. I find this panel just so fascinating. I love listening to it already, and I find that I have a lot of similarities actually in the work that I've done. A little bit of women's economic empowerment and working on the ground with sort of a modified micro-lending, as well as working in fashion accessories and on the ground in Ecuador. To give you an idea of my background, I started a nonprofit arts organization in New York City and ran that for 5 years in my 20s. And then my husband and I, we were dating at the time, decided, oh, we kind of want to change. What are we going to do next? And we decided to join the Peace Corps. And both of us kind of have these very social entrepreneurship backgrounds ourselves. And so when we got into the Peace Corps, we were just raring to go and really excited to be on the ground and work, hands-on with people trying to help in whatever capacity. And it just so happened, and was very lucky for us, that we ended up in Ecuador on the coast, living on the beach. Our view outside of our window was the beach. It was absolutely gorgeous, in a tiny fishing village with people really living at the level of poverty. And the thing about Peace Corps that's different about some other aid organizations is that everybody that works with Peace Corps, when you are a volunteer, you live and work in the community at the same economic level. So if your neighbor doesn't have hot water, which we didn't, our neighbor didn't have it, we don't have it either. If you don't have, indoor plumbing and everyone, use a latrine or something else, like that's, your reality too. And so you really do get very ingrained in your community, and service is for 2 years. So you really have an opportunity to research your community, get to know people on a personal level, and really build that trust and build that confidence, and then start your work. And so for us, we were lucky that a previous Peace Corps volunteer had worked with a small group of women and had been doing some recycled art projects for fun. And so there were about 5 women, and they would show up sporadically to do these projects. And when I came along, I went to the first meeting, and one of the women showed up, and I was glad that anybody showed up. And she showed me what she was doing, and she was rolling these paper beads. And as someone that's worked in arts education, I had done that before, but not of this quality and with this process. It was a very unique process that they were doing. So I really was so excited to work with them. Progressively over time, more women started showing up. We really opened up the membership, and we decided to commercialize. And so today it's 18 members, so they're women working on the ground, hands-on, doing this work. And they're doing paper beads and some other accessories, but mainly paper bead necklaces, and I'm wearing one. So these are little tiny beads. And then
Beautiful.
Thank you. And they're crocheted. So the women do all of the designing, all of the making, and they run the business. It's a for-profit microenterprise. They reinvest back into the business. They are the leadership board. The only man that was even remotely involved, and he was very involved at the time when we were there, was my husband, Paul. So we would joke that the group's name is Mujeres Cambia, which means women change, like a call to action to change. And so it was Mujeres Cambia and Paul. But now, we still consult with them. They will call me on Google Hangout all the time. So we get to keep up with our children and our families, and also the business. But they sell across the United States, on our website, across Ecuador, in Europe. So we had to really help them to really build that infrastructure from the ground up. They did not have any kind of infrastructure. They had no inventory processing system, no order system. No, they didn't know how to mail a package. People don't have addresses. Like, we didn't have a street name. We were the house on the corner by the beach, So
I have the same issue with my girls in Guatemala who make bracelets. The recipients of our girls' education, they make bracelets, and they can't mail a package. I've been working very hard on this. It's a problem when you have a supply chain that has a broken link like that.
Yeah. So we worked on everything from here's where the main post office that you need to travel. Unfortunately, it's an hour away. But what we did with the organization that was unique and had to do with financial literacy and empowerment too was create a group fund. So 100% of every sale goes back to the group. So if you buy a necklace for $10, that $10 goes directly back to Mujeres Cambia. $8, so 80%, goes directly to the one woman who made that. And so each one, you were talking, Megan, about the tags. Each of our tags has a picture of the woman who made it, and it has a goal that she's working towards.
Oh, wow.
And so you know exactly where the money is going. 20% goes into the group fund, and the group fund is used for all sorts of shared costs. So the travel, which is 35 cents to get on the bus to go to the post office, that would be from the group fund, so that no woman could say, I can't go mail a package because I don't have the 35 cents. Well, you have the group fund. And then mailing the package, so the cost of that, if you're mailing a big box to the United States, plus insurance and everything, it's going to be like $100, right? That's very hard for anyone, any entrepreneur in the developing world to have that $100 up front, right? So the group fund provides for that. Brochures, advertisement, the website fees, everything like that, that's all paid for by the group fund. So they're constantly reinvesting. But we found that they weren't necessarily reinvesting back in their own families. And so, I think you mentioned something like this, that sometimes it's difficult, that even though women do reinvest more in families than men do, and we saw this, firsthand, often because the men are not contributing, if there is an emergency or an unforeseen cost, then the woman, what little income she's bringing into the family, and in our case, the women started making more than their husbands. It's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
But their money would be spent first, right? So the guy would still get to go out gambling and drinking. Unfortunately, that was the reality on the coast where we lived. He would get to go do his thing, and the family wouldn't have, food or money to get to the hospital. So we also created a social loan fund, which is this modified, micro lending that I was talking about. And so I think we started with $100 from the group fund. We put that into a separate lockbox and have a separate person that is voted on that is going to be the keeper of that and the manager of that. And it provides for microloans, and the term is 1 month. They decide on what the interest is, and they decided on 10% interest, which compounds if you don't pay back the loan in the month that you say you will. And so that's grown, and it's over $1,000 now. And so now the loans can be even bigger, and it's similar to a sort of community bank, which is another model that sounds similar to maybe something that the students were reading about in their literature. So,
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
It's Isa here. So when, as the loan fund has grown bigger and you're giving out bigger loans, are the terms changing for the payment terms? If I take out $20 instead of $30, do I get 3 months or so to pay?
They've decided, because everything they do is democratic, and they lead the meetings and they decide everything. And it was interesting as our role as volunteers there to help inspire and motivate this, that we don't have a vote. We would just give advice and motivate. And so they've decided that it's going to be 10% in a month. I think it's just easier to remember those terms also, and that they can continue to vote that, to continue that way, or they can decide to change it at any time, and they just need a majority.
I think, too, what's really interesting about some of the stuff that you're bringing that we take for granted is just understanding, like, what you're saying, marketing around this and telling the story of the product and connecting people here at home with these incredible stories and these incredible women. Would you speak a little bit about sort of those other skills that might not be first on our list that really help the women entrepreneurs scale?
Absolutely. So a few other things that we did were this women's empowerment workshop series. So we did things like public speaking. I remember the first time I went to a meeting, and I'm outgoing and I'm fluent in Spanish and Colombian myself, and I was trying to talk to people, and here I am, this enthusiastic person that grew up in the United States, and I'm going to come in, and the women on the coast are just much more demure, and just Ecuadorian culture itself is a little bit more closed, and so it was very difficult to get women to talk in public. So even though they know all the answers to all the questions that are going to be asked of them, they would rather push me forward, and I would always push them forward. And so we would do everything from role plays. Somebody calls you on the phone, and again, the group fund paid for a phone and made sure that it had money on it to be able to answer the calls. And I would have other volunteers call me, on the phone, and we would go through it so that they could practice. And they just had to break down those barriers. And I remember very early on, Jenny, who was the treasurer at first and is now the president, she had a very controlling husband who wouldn't really let her even leave the house, and so we were meeting many times at her house, which was this tiny cinder block house, and all of us just crushed in there. And she was too scared to go to, we had a corporate event with HP. She was too scared to be the representative to go to the corporate event. It was like 2 hours away by bus, but everything was being paid for. It was going to be a group of women going. And she said, no, I can't go. And she has these 2 daughters that would show up to all of the meetings. I'd say, but, do this for your daughters. How proud are they going to be of you? And, we really built her up. And she went to the event. And I think of the person who was too scared to go to this event to then become the president of the group. She was just voted in the president the last time. And she is now out there speaking in front of people and being a representative of the group. That really shows kind of the trajectory.
Well, it's one of the most important points that's come up today, so I'm so happy you made it in the sense, and this is something she's the first, takes very seriously. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to support the GAP curriculum is how are we making sure that we're lifting up the voices of women and girls that we touch so that they become the future leaders on the ground. And I think that communication and that story is such a beautiful story and one that is really important to me in this work in global development. We don't want to be here in the West always, promoting and saying what needs to happen out there. And we want to see those women now, leading. So thank you. That was really touching to me. And I thought it would also be maybe inspiring for everyone tuning in to think about that, back to that time in your life when you're like, I want to do more, and you're applying and you're looking at these organizations and you choose Peace Corps, which we all know is one of the most incredible programs that exist. Will you tell a little bit about that process and maybe any advice to someone who's listening now who might be thinking about that upon graduation?
Sure. For me, I'd been a social entrepreneur and been working in the social sector since I graduated. And it's interesting because I had in my mind, like, oh, I missed the boat on Peace Corps because I had been kind of working for 10 years. I had 10 years since I graduated from college, and then I got my master's. And, I thought, oh, that's something that you only do after college. I sort of missed the boat, and I was very serious with my husband at the time. And then we looked it up, and we found out that the average age for Peace Corps volunteer these days is 27. And so there are, recent college graduates as well as mid-career professionals and retirees. And they're also trying to promote more couples, including same-sex couples now, which is very exciting, to serve together. So at the time, we had to be married. My husband and I got married like 6 weeks after we put in our application. And the application process was very, very difficult at the time, and it's sort of notorious for being very difficult. But now, in the last year, they've entirely revamped the process that the application should not take you more than an hour to do now, initially. Wow. They've really fast-tracked a lot of the medical documents because that was a several-month-long, it was an inch thick of all the forms and things that we had to do. So while they're still doing the due diligence, I think that they're seeing that they don't need to make as many barriers, that there are a lot of people who want to serve and a lot of people that want to get involved, and it really should be open to everybody and available. So
that's great. And we actually got our first question that just popped in, and it's for you. And it says, how often do the women take out loans from the social fund? And this is from Fairy Marie. So thank you, and I'll let you jump in. And
there are some women. Thanks for the question. There are some women that will be more regular social fund users. Another thing that I actually forgot to mention was, Megan was talking about the status symbol being a purse. Well, in our group, the status symbol was getting a bank account. So there are many, families, they've never had a bank account, and so the fact that it was a bank account in the woman's name, and that the man could not take out, their husband, their partner, whoever, could not take out of the bank account, that was really important. I'm mentioning this because we were trying to incentivize savings, and so to do that we had a savings raffle where anyone who had saved 20% of what they had made in the month and showed us the slip of paper would be eligible to receive a raffle ticket. And with 18 women, like, everyone had a chance. In the time that we were there, everybody won a prize, and they were like irons and pitchers and household items. So there were some women that were definitely more, their personalities were very motivated by the savings part, and they were like, maybe like a third were very into the savings, and then there are probably about a third, this is like a normal bell curve, about a third that are very heavy users of the social loan fund. And there was, I think, one case of a woman who people felt like she was abusing it, and then that meant that we all talked about it. And so we were all trying to be very transparent and open, and we all, sat down and tried to, and we talked a lot about empathy and trying to understand where she's coming from, and asking her, why do you need the money? Is it, do you need help with saving? How can you do this differently? Is it, and so people were very understanding of that. And so when you ask about the different loan terms, if a woman couldn't pay in a month, that really triggered a conversation more than, just the increase in the interest. So I'd say like about a third use the loan fund once a month or once every couple months. A third don't use it at all, and a third are occasional.
That's great. Aisha, do you want to jump in a little bit and talk about any specifics around the programs you've worked with? I know we started off with you and we've touched on so many different things that you work on.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Before I jump on that, I just wanted to say two things. One, I was so happy when, Marisa, you told that story, because oftentimes I feel like a big misconception when people are talking about poverty is that people think poverty is just about money. But oftentimes it's not just about money. It's about, the poverty of self-esteem, the lack of hope, the lack of opportunity, the lack of freedom that really affects people's ability to realize that they can achieve. And the second thing that I really liked about Megan and Marisa, you guys are very numbers-based. I like that because numbers got me into this work. I didn't jump into development world immediately after I graduated. I have a business degree and then a law degree. So I did a bunch of other things, and finally my conviction really came from the numbers, right? I looked at, I'm from Liberia and Sierra Leone and Guinea, so I'm from the trifecta where a lot of things are happening right now. And I sat down one day when I was having a midlife crisis. I sat down and I look at the numbers. You grew up in this area, so generally you have anecdotes of things going bad for people. You see, my family were refugees, twice because of the wars when I was growing up. But you don't really, at least my mind, didn't really absorb what was going on until, I sat down and I looked at some of these numbers and just allow me to read them for you. They're terrible. For example, if you're thinking about girls and girls empowerment, so in Sierra Leone, 50% of girls will be single mothers by age of 30. 75% of adolescent girls will become single mothers. Let's see, 72% of girls will be married, by the age of, let's see. No, this is for contraception. So girls between the ages 15 and 24, 72% would never have used contraception. And if you think the numbers are bad in Sierra Leone, the numbers are even worse in Liberia. So this really gave me the conviction to jump into this type of work. So for me, it became perfect then that the two things that I really work on in those two countries have to do with microfinance, microloans, and girls programs. So our girls... Mm-hmm.
We've had a question actually specifically around this come in for you. One
sure.
from Staten Island Academy asking, should banks incentivize women in low income to take out loans? And another one it's very similar, and how do we get girls to establish themselves economically? So it's kind of like, where does that responsibility fall when we're trying to address these numbers? How are we incentivizing, and at the same time making sure that we're establishing these more long-term things? So I think this is exactly what you're kind of hitting on.
Yes. So that's a very good segue to speak first about girls. For example, our girls programs, the BRAC Girls program, the ELA program, it's acronym for Empowerment and Livelihoods for Adolescents. It's a program that with social and financial empowerment combined. So for social empowerment, you have education in health, you have life skills type education, and then for financial, you have livelihood type trainings, you have loans, you have entrepreneurship type trainings that are given to young girls. And in Liberia and in Sierra Leone, and most of in Uganda as well, we are able to give girls outside of the banking regulation, we usually get loans to girls starting age 16 in a very controlled manner. So in that way, you're able to create. You're able to give the girls an incentive because you're giving them a business as well as access to money. But then, very importantly, you're helping them build credit. Right? We come from societies where girls don't have access to credit. They don't have a credit history. So if you have a 16-year-old girl who's been doing work, sometimes in a group, sometimes individually, and she can point to, for example, the BRAC microfinance companies. I've taken out loans here, and here I've repaid them. When she's 18, when she's 20, she's able to get into the system. Oftentimes, it's not. The question is not about incentivizing women to take out loans. It's actually about getting them to be eligible for loans, right? There are so many barriers around access to finance that some women, they don't even try to go there because their experiences with banks have not been wholly positive.
Well, Megan,
and just one last point on that is that usually in banks that are not pro-poor focused, interest rates are too high. Yeah, the loan ceiling is too high and interest rates are too high, and
they're not serving women at all. Yeah. Megan, you have some financial programs on the ground specifically for girls. Do you mind just talking a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. When I started figuring out where where the resources were going to go from the sales proceeds to impact girls, I actually reached out to a woman named Judith Bruce at the Population Council who has been doing work with girls. Aissa probably knows her. She's a hero. For more than 30 years, and she has a statistic that always makes me a little sad, but really speaks to the heart of it. She said the number one thing all girls need is 5 friends and a place to meet them, a safe place to meet them, which makes you think about how many girls don't have that. There are parts of the world where the Population Council is really focused on particularly the age of 12. It's when girls go through puberty, when they become economic assets. So often they're working before that, but they're certainly put to work. They're also economic assets in the sense that their parents need to keep them safe so that they're marriageable. You can get raped on the way to school. You can get raped by your teacher. You can get raped if you're on a bicycle. So Judith will talk a lot about research that shows, and AID has some of this as well, that the area of operation of boys and girls at 8 in some parts of the world is like this, and by the time they're 12, girls' world looks like this, and a boy's world looks like this, which is a huge part of, this is just at the age when girls are really craving social interaction, and they get cut off from the world. They don't understand necessarily how their bodies work. They don't understand how money works. They don't have access to resources. They don't see a future outside of the one in their immediate community, which often is child marriage in places like Guatemala too. The Liberia numbers are horrible, I certainly, the ones in Guatemala are, and obviously she's the first works there, so people know them potentially, but I think it's 1 in 10,000 girls even goes to university. The statistics are very grim, particularly for secondary school. So I focus really on her advice on that crucial age of 12, and I support a program that the Population Council developed together with Guatemala's first indigenous female doctor to focus specifically on adolescent girls in the highlands. They're indigenous girls in the highlands of Guatemala. And it's a curriculum that delivers basic education, but also financial literacy. A lot of things spoke to me about what Aissa said. I think it's, there's some best practices out there in terms of what girls need, but it's really focused on delivering the skills that girls need to take control of their own future. So understanding, and one of the things that I think is so great about what they do is that they incorporate a mentorship program, which they believe is the most efficient way to make a real difference in a girl's life. Even an hour a month makes a huge difference. And so they'll specifically find a girl from a similar community who's gone through the mentorship program, the life skills program and education program, and who comes back and mentors girls and gives them a chance to really kind of speak their own language and understand what their path forward might be. And what we've done with them, what they found, which I probably would sound similar to Aissa, they actually enroll girls between the age of 8 and 12. They try to get them a little bit before 12 because and they work in the same way in terms of really working with communities to create a safe place for girls that's honored by the community and respected. But they found that they would have girls in the program, but by the age of about 15, they were all dropping out, even though they're eligible to remain through 19. And that was because the pressure to create, to earn money was just too large. And they earn in a variety of ways, sometimes in the tourist trade, sometimes in agriculture, often in more unfortunate circumstances. And what they really wanted to see was a way to keep those older girls, the older adolescent girls involved, and also to provide a way to test their program. And they were delivering financial literacy skills to girls, but girls never had any money, so they never had a way to test if it was working. And so I worked with them to create a little mini production co-op, which is essentially an add-on to their existing curriculum, which I respect so much. And we took a few of the girls, young women who graduated from this program and have formed their own NGO, and were kind of an NGO for hire. They were looking for work, and they didn't want to go back into making tourist trinkets. And so we empowered them, these 4 girls, run by a woman named Ermelinda Pacheco, who have some production skills, and brought together the older adolescent girls in the program to make very simple bracelets. They're certainly not a labor force for me at all, but the making of the bracelets, 100% of the proceeds go directly to the girls. They get to earn money for the first time. They can put it towards their education. They can practice the financial literacy skills. And what's so nice is that it's so rooted in how they really work. When the girls are making things, they chat. And so they deliver the curriculum and more things, and they build their social networks, and they learn more things. And so it's really an attraction to keep them involved and growing, and help them visualize it, and really actually deliver on a real program, on a real different future. I mean, Judith Bruce will say, no one teaches their kids to dream and doesn't give them the tools to do it. We are about giving them the tools to do it. And so that's what we're trying to support.
I love that. And again, all 3 of you guys hit on community as being an essential piece of this being successful, both from value chains, distribution chains, from looking at how you're building funds that serve the community and letting the women make the decisions on that, how we're banking as a community. And I think that there's something about this GAP program, again, and the community that She's the First has created that has drawn all of us to it. And, I do want to, again, say to all of the college students tuning in that the community that you have, both communicating through GAP overseas and with each other, is incredible. It's the Chinese proverb that when the tide rises, all the boats rise. And thank you, Megan. You couldn't have brought it all together with a better story. I know we're getting towards the end. I want to check if there's any last questions. We have a couple minutes left.
Can I add something about motivating young women, or any women really, financially?
Yeah.
I would say, piggybacking on what Aisha and Megan both said, is that this sense of community, this positive peer pressure really helps. And as you were saying too, in addition to success, and so success can look different and be actual dollars. The women that I'm working with are their average family size is 6 people. Some are larger families, some are smaller families, and they live on $10 a day. And that's if they are getting any income, and sometimes they don't. And so when we started working with them, that's where they were. Since working with them, they've made, collectively, 18 of the women have made $30,000 and reinvested that back into the business and in themselves. And so what really I think set off the motivation for the women to continue to do this, and also to continue to save and to reinvest in all of that, were early successes. And so that we were very lucky that we had some key successes where, not just the fact that they had some really big sales in the beginning, but also the fact that we did a brochure and we had everybody's picture in it. And it was something tangible that the women could walk around the village and say, this is me. I exist and I'm doing something amazing, and look at me, this is real. Because a lot of people come into villages and they promise things and they say things, and I'm sure that you've all experienced this, that a lot of people promise things, but when you can actually deliver, that's when people get really excited and they become motivated in that way. So having early successes and having that sort of, the social aspect, the positive peer pressure, I think that works too.
So I want to give everybody a minute to just do a quick closing, their thoughts on what what personally they think is the key to economic empowerment. And if they have any words of wisdom for these young, amazing, bright, incredible students tuning in. We'll start with you since we're right here.
Me, Marisa?
Yeah, Marisa, sorry. I can see you, so I was like...
Oh, yeah, I can see you well. I feel like I did sum up a little bit with that, and I would also add in terms of advice, so I can give the other panelists more time, is be really good at failing. I think failing is super important. Don't be scared of it. Embrace it. Do something better next time. Learn from it. And if you can do that, you're going to be successful in anything. So that sort of resilience. If you can cultivate that resilience, you're going to be great.
Resilience. That's good. Megan?
Sure. You know, I have to say one of the best things about Katrina for me has been your generation, maybe a slightly older, but a fair amount of college students we work with. We have an ambassadors program where people can sell and either earn commission or just sell because they want to make an impact. There's one particular woman at Georgetown who sent me, I think, a $4,000 check and a thank you note because I changed her life. I was sort of like, what? But this incredibly impassioned speech about how she wanted to give back to women and girls, and this gave her an actionable way to do it. And so I find that the heart of the next generation and the values, or the millennial generation, I think is amazing, and it gives me enormous hope for my daughter, who's 7, that she's going to have you guys as role models to look up to. And I would just say that you've got fantastic intentions, and my advice would be figure out how the real world works and make it work better. So rather than envisioning sort of your dream of how you think it should be, which is maybe your personal inspiration, figure out how things tangibly work in an area where you can really have an impact, what skills you need to actually deliver that impact on the ground, however you want to do it, for the people and the places you care about. Get the skills, try a lot of stuff, fail, I mean, as Marisa said, but really, you know, it takes real work, it takes an enormous amount of legwork, it takes more than heart, to really deliver sustainable change. And so find the people around you who you can learn from and really try to lay the groundwork for that long-term sustainable impact that you want to see in the world.
Yeah, I think you guys summed it up pretty well. I would say, based on my experiences, don't ever count yourself out. It's corny, but we each can make a difference in the different things that we do, no matter where you are, if you're private sector or public sector. Personally, I don't have that divide between private and public sector. I see it all can be channeled to a positive direction, which is where we want to go, or want to see the world going. So never count yourself out. Yeah, and just jump in and do it. It's fun, this work that we do. And it's fulfilling.
That's great. Thank you guys all for joining. I would say that all of us have taken the road untaken, and we've gone after challenges and jobs and opportunities and never looked back and believed in our own, compass to make those decisions. So good luck to you guys.
Thank you.
And one final thank you to Natalie for moderating this evening, and to all of our panelists for joining us. A little internet round of applause for you. And for all of the students who are watching, this will be available on YouTube by tomorrow morning, so you can share it with the chapter members who weren't able to join us. You can also check out the STF Gap hashtag, which has been very busy this evening for some of our best tweetable takeaways and quotes, and to tweet at our speakers and ask them more questions. So thank you all for joining us this evening. It's been a great conversation, and we look forward to our new GAP topic next month. Bye, everybody.
Bye.